What's up guys, I'm Aaron and welcome to part 2 of our electrical system upgrade. Today we are doing our Victron Energy 3000 watt Multiplus inverter. If you haven't seen part 1, check that out. It is our 400 amp hours of Battleborn batteries, and we put those in about a week ago. And that was a pretty simple install, at least the battery part was, but running all of the cabling and all of the components in this tiny van was the difficult part. So check that one out. But today we are going to get into this Victron Energy Multiplus 3000 watt inverter, and I'm pretty excited to get it going. I've done a little bit of the battery and the 12 volt systems before, but dealing with the AC and the 12 volt together in an inverter is a little bit different for me. So I've been spending a little bit of time researching it, just trying to make sure I get everything down and my head wrapped around the entire project. I reached out to the guys at Battleborn Batteries just to kind of double check and make sure what I was thinking and how this is going to go together in the van is the right way. They're a big help there. I also reached out to some fellow full-time RVers that have put in this system before, and that just kind of helps me get my head around it. So let's get started today, and hopefully this will be an easy upgrade. So this inverter is a 12 volt 3000 watt 120 amp charger inverter. It's also a hybrid inverter. So the hybrid portion of it is where it will assist from the batteries if there is not enough power to run a particular appliance or two from the shore power or generator or wherever your energy source is. So let's say we're driveway surfing at a friend's house and they have a 15 amp power cord that we're plugging into. So we have 15 amps available from their house. And then what this hybrid inverter can do is it can take the rest of the power from the batteries and it can supplement that so that you don't overload the circuit at the house. So we're upgrading from a 1000 watt Magnum inverter, and the way that that was hooked up was the inverter was on a 20 amp circuit on our breaker panel, and then it was hooked up to 3 outlets inside the van. So when you turned on that inverter, it powered 3 outlets up to 1000 watts. So the way we're going to hook up this system is the shore power and the generator come into a transfer switch. The power from the transfer switch is going to go directly into the back of the inverter, and then the inverter is going to power the breaker panel. So everything that is on the AC breaker panel will be powered or be able to be powered by this and the batteries, so including the air conditioner and the microwave and basically the entire coach. So very excited about that, and let's kind of map this out and see where we're going to do all the wiring, and let's get this thing rocking. Part of the reason I went with this Victron is because I already have their MPPT smart solar controller, and also we installed the BMV 712 battery monitor system, so it's nice to have the components all work nicely together and they're all Bluetooth. This one's not Bluetooth, but it does have an optional Bluetooth dongle that we're going to hook up with this also, and that way all 3 devices will be controlled by the same app, Victron Connect. We made 2 5-foot battery cables. This is 4/0 with 5/16 lugs on here. We used about 5 feet total of battery cable hooking up the batteries and all the accessories there, and we had 2 packages of 5 foot, and so this is the rest of it. On the AC side of things, we're going with Romex 10-2. This is basically just to run new wire from the back of the inverter into the AC panel. Like I said before, our other inverter was hooked up to a 20 amp circuit. It had 12-2 instead of 10-2, and so that cable was a little bit smaller, so we wanted to make sure we had the appropriate size for the 30 amp circuit. Let's take a look at this inverter quick. Inside you get the mounting plate, which this thing is pretty heavy. I think it's around 50 pounds. I was kind of amazed when I picked up one of the Battleborn batteries and it's around 30 pounds. and it just seems extremely light for a battery where normal batteries are, 50 or 60 pounds. And then this inverter was extremely heavy, and I was just kind of surprised on how the batteries are light and the inverter's really heavy. But that's a good thing. These are heavy duty made, and a lot of professionals install these in a lot of systems, so I'm very excited about that. It also comes with a temperature sensor for the batteries, but the Bluetooth dongle that we have is also a battery temperature sensor, so I think we're just going to use that. So here is the inverter itself. It does not come with a remote display or a remote switch, so the on-off charger only button is here. That's why I got the Bluetooth dongle. Otherwise, a lot of people use the color screen monitor. I think it's called the GX color monitor, which ties everything in together, which is pretty cool too. This is where the mounting plate holds on to the top part of it on the back, and then it also has 2 screws that hold it into the bottom. So let's take a look at where this thing's gonna go. You can see an upgrade of this size takes up a lot of space in a van like this. So it took me a little bit to figure out how I wanted to do it. Originally, I was gonna put the batteries underneath the sofa here. This is our sofa and our bed. It's like a power convertible sofa. And I was gonna put the inverter kind of tucked back where the batteries are right now, but all of our electrical wiring and components are kind of housed inside here. So then I was going to put the inverter kind of right here, close to the batteries, close to all this, just to keep all the connections and the runs short. But you can see there's not a lot of storage space. We carry weights and workout equipment and your chairs and table, and there's just not a lot of space. So what I ended up thinking about doing is putting the inverter on this side, which it will fit pretty perfectly, I hope. This is our water heater right here, and I'm a little worried about the heat there, but at the same time I have these spacer blocks that's going to kind of keep it off of that, and hopefully will provide enough insulation in between. So that is the game plan, to put the inverter over here. This silver box right here is our transfer switch, so our shore power and generator power goes into the transfer switch, and then right now the output from that transfer switch goes into the back of our AC breaker panel. So what we're going to do is take our AC from that, put it to the input of our inverter, and then our output of the inverter is going to go back to power the AC breaker panel. So before mounting that inverter up over there, let's go ahead and do our cable run. We're going to need our 2 12-volt battery cables to go from here over to this side. We'll also run our AC wire to the back of the AC panel. This should be as simple as that. At first, like I said, it was very daunting, but I think once you wrap your head around how the wiring, the 12-volt and the AC 120 gets hooked up, it should just be a matter of a few connections and then also mounting it. So let's go ahead and run the cabling, then we'll mount it, then we'll hook it up, and hopefully that's it. Don't forget, working with 120 and 12-volt power is dangerous, so if you're not familiar with this or it seems a little daunting, consult a professional or have them do it. This is just for informational purposes here. I am not a professional myself, and this just gives you a little bit of an idea of how this fits inside of our van, which is a 2014 Airstream Interstate, and what we're running for our setup. So safety first, and let's get to work. Okay, we have our 12-volt positive and negative 4-aught battery cables ran. These things are pretty thick, very flexible, but for their size at least, but they are very thick and tight spots in there. But with the inverter sitting right here, these are gonna mount up, connect to it that way, and then through this rat's nest of wires we have here, which I still have to clean up a little bit. Here is our positive bus bar back here, which we'll be hooking up our positive to, and then the negative side will be going up underneath here to our negative bus bar right there. So hopefully that should be nice and clean and easy once we get it done. And now let's move on to the AC wiring, and we'll get that ran, and then we'll be ready to mount it up. So here is our transfer switch. You can see that's a Parallax power supply ATS 301. And so there is two inputs. One is our shore power and one is our generator. So both of those come into the transfer switch and they go out with a single 10-2 run. And that connects into the back of our AC panel right here in the orange wire. So what we're gonna do is disconnect that. This will be our new input for the inverter, and then we'll have to run another lead from the output of the inverter back into this slot to power the 30 amp breaker, which will power the entire coach. Also, there is a chassis ground wire that was on our previous inverter, and Victron does recommend having a ground chassis if it's in a mobile unit. So there's a lug on the case of the inverter, which this isn't going to reach back over there, so I'm going to have to run a new copper wire for that, for the chassis ground, and that should complete its connection. Where the previous inverter went in, so all I did with that wire was disconnect it from the back of our old inverter, and this is connected to 3 outlets up front, and I just put it into the 20 amp breaker that was powering our inverter previously. So that worked out nice and slick. It just went in, and then all of the outlets are powered now. So when I actually disconnected that, half of our outlets didn't work because we're connected into shore power and the inverter was disconnected, so those outlets were basically dead. So easy connection there, but that was what was kind of confusing for me at first, just because our inverter is not hooked up the same way this one is. The Victron inverter is also a automatic transfer switch, so it can handle and be a bypass so that the shore power goes through it. And with it being a hybrid, it will kick on the battery power when needed. Just so you can kind of see what this mess of wires is, this is for our power sofa. There's the motor for that right there. This 12-volt battery cable that runs up top there comes from our chassis battery, which connects into our lithium battery isolation manager down there, that green guy. And this is the back of our AC breaker panel. So the red wire, little skinny red wire here, is the 12-volt power for all of our 12-volt power, which is what these leads are. Basically your lights and your fans and safety equipment, smoke detector and propane alarm, things like that, which is kind of what the bulk of this mess of wires is here, along with our solar leads off of our MPPT Victron controller there. And all of the rest of this stuff I go over in our battery installation video, so check that one out, and don't forget to stay tuned for a bunch more videos on testing out the capability of the off-grid usage here for 400 amp hours of the Battleborn batteries and this new Victron inverter. So here we are inside the coach. This is the front of the AC breaker panel. You can see that it looks just like that. Our AC breakers are here. Our DC fuses are on this side. So if you just remove the 4 screws, this pops off, and then that reveals the guts of the breaker box. So the far upper right corner back here, I don't know if you can see back there, but that's the orange jacket for the main power that's coming in. It also goes into this precision circuits. They basically call it their power control system, and what that does is it sheds different circuits so that you don't turn on the microwave and the air conditioner at the same time and break an actual circuit. It controls it in there before having it break. So I don't know how that's going to work being hooked up to the new inverter with it being a hybrid. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just gonna rehook this up the way it was. So it looks like the power wire goes into the back of this, so we're gonna have to try to drop that somehow. And then here is the neutral and then the ground back there. So okay, let's figure out the power, the hot. Okay, hopefully that'll do it. Oh, that's just like a comical joke right there. So the wire just passes directly through it, where I thought it actually hooked up inside of this, and then a separate wire came out to the 30 amp breaker. But it looks like the actual hot lead from the 30 amp in just goes through this for some reason and right to the breaker. So, and maybe that passes through there for a reason, like a Hall sensor, which I don't know much about, but maybe it's sensing the current that goes through there. I have no idea. That's so weird. But there is our AC power right there. So simple as that. Whew, wrestling with this 10-2 wire is fun, but we got that strung back out. You can see we now have it right here, which is a little long, but I'm going to string it back inside underneath the water heater. But before I do that, I wanted to run another 5-foot section of that Romex for our AC out. So this wire, which comes from our transfer switch, will now be our AC in on the inverter side, and our AC out will connect back up to the panel. So we'll run that, and we're making some progress. We have our new 30 amp in, which will come from the back of the inverter, so the inverter out. And I ran a new ground chassis wire right there. So we're gonna hook these back up, and then we'll be done on the inside of the AC panel, and we'll just have all of our connections ran out to where the inverter is gonna be, and then we can start mounting that thing up. So let's get to it. Whew, well, I feel like we're halfway done with this project, or at least I hope we are. But we have all of the AC wires hooked up on the coach side. So then we just have them running over here, waiting to be hooked up to the inverter. We have our AC in, our AC out, and our chassis ground. And our DC wires, I just kind of thought that maybe we should hook those up to the chassis side. Also, like I said, there's our positive bus bar, and our negative bus bar is hiding around the corner there. So I'm gonna go ahead and hook those up, and then we're gonna be fully wired on the coach side, and it's gonna be just the inverter that we need to mount and then finish hooking up. Wow, super frustrating step there. That was supposed to be an easy hookup on the DC wiring, but that ended up taking well over an hour, and all thanks to this lovely little corner that I have in here. So you can just see how tight all of these connections are on that positive bus bar. Anytime you move one thing, you have to almost move them all, and they just don't like to move at all with that heavy gauge cabling in there. So I think I have it all tidied back up though, and really, there really wasn't anywhere else for me to put that bus bar, so it's not bad once it's done, but when you got to move one thing, it's just amazingly frustrating. So the negative side buttoned up nicely, that's nice and easy, but this positive side is just so tight with that 4/0 cabling everywhere. So next step, we are gonna put back the wood shroud over this water heater, and then we're gonna mount up our 2 little pieces of scrap wood, which is what the inverter is going to mount to. So we have our DC cabling here ready to go, and we have our AC wires here ready to go, and we are getting closer and closer. So let's try to wrap this thing up. Mounted up. I'm okay, moderately happy with the way that it mounted up. It is extremely heavy, so I'm limited on some screws that I needed to mount this sideboard back to it, so I might use an L bracket. But it is mounted just to this piece of wood, which is mounted to some more plywood underneath the water heater, so it has a good base. But I'm probably gonna do a little bit more because it does weigh quite a bit. I like the way this turned out though, and this is what I was hoping for, was space all around this thing. It can get hot when it's running, so they do recommend a vertical mount, but you can also do a horizontal mount, but this way you get the most airflow from the bottom. And if you look up through here, there'll be nice vents up on top. But I'm pretty pleased with the way that that worked out, and you can kind of see how that fits in there. It's very, very tight. The sofa is going to lay basically right on top of this thing, so at night it's just kind of a very perfect fit. Okay, we reran the positive and negative, and we now have room for them both to fit, which is great. Just barely, these 5-foot cables just barely made it. So from here, we're just gonna make all of our connections. Positive goes into the positive, negative goes to the negative battery, and then we have our, this is our AC in. Remember, this came from our transfer switch. So this is going to be the AC in from the shore power or the generator. And then we had what we ran back to the AC breaker panel. So this will be our AC out. They do have an AC out 1 and an AC out 2. And I think the AC out 2 only works on shore power. It's kind of an auxiliary one. So if you only wanted like your water heater to work or your air conditioner or something, that you didn't want to pull off the batteries, that's what you'd put into AC2, I believe. And then we're also going to connect up that ground chassis. Then there will also be the network cabling right up here, which is going to hook up to our Bluetooth dongle, which we have to run back over to the battery. So let's get all these cables hooked up and wires hooked up, and then we'll keep moving along. The way that's looking so far. Last connection in here is the RJ45 Cat 6 network cable. I think this is. I think Cat 5 or Cat 6, either one will work as long as it's the RJ45 connector. This is going to hook up into our Bluetooth dongle over by the battery, and then right up into one of those ports. So that should be the last connection. Okay, that click sounded good. Double check all of your connections. AC in, line, neutral, ground. AC out, line, neutral, ground. Negative battery cable, positive battery cable. That's it. I'm gonna put the cover back on. You will need that network cable to program the charge settings on this. It doesn't program over Bluetooth like the smart controller for solar, and then also the battery monitor. These haven't come out with the Bluetooth programming yet. I think it's going to be coming because now they're using the Victron Connect app along with the MK3 network cable adapter. So it's coming down the pipeline, I think. All right, we are getting closer and closer to finishing this install, and I am excited for that. But before we do wrap it up and test it, we still have to do our smart dongle, which shouldn't be too difficult to hook up. It's just going to have a positive and negative, and then that goes right to the battery. This will stick on the side of the battery. And that RJ45 cable that we ran earlier, that's going to stay plugged into that, and then we will have Bluetooth control and some monitoring over the inverter. Also, to program it, you do need this MK3 to USB piece from Victron. There is a video that Battleborn has that honestly I'm probably going to watch before I program it, just to double check. I've seen it before. It's a short one, but it's quick and easy on how to set them up for the charging profile for these Battleborn batteries. And then Victron just put out something that's a little bit new, where you can use the Victron Connect app instead of the Victron Configure website or software. So that's supposed to be getting easier and easier when you use the Victron Connect, but I'm not honestly sure how that works, so we're going to try that out. But I at least want to get everything wrapped up and test it and make sure that it all works. So let's finish this final step. All right, that was the last connection for that Bluetooth dongle, and I think we're ready to see if everything's working. Chris, you want to hit the 12-volt power? See what happens. Can't tell if any lights are on this. Oh, this is actually switched off right now. And I think I'm just gonna switch the inverter on and see what happens. I heard a click. Ooh, that was our microwave that just beeped. That means that it actually powered up our AC breaker switch and onto the microwave. I'm gonna try the Bluetooth app again and see if it there it picks up our Bluetooth battery monitor and solar charger, and there it is, a picture of our inverter, VE Bus Smart HQ. Yeah, so it looks like everything is working. I'm super stoked. It did take me all day long. This was kind of my first dealings with an inverter. I've done some batteries before, but it was definitely an all day long project. So I'm glad it's over with, although there is still a ton left to do with cleanup and wirings, and I still need to mount the batteries down and make sure the inverter's mounted perfectly how I want it. But otherwise, I think this will call a success. So stay tuned for new videos that we're going to be doing on testing out our 400 amp hours of Battleborn batteries and new inverter. And I'll put all the links down below in the description of the products that we used. And if you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up hit the subscribe button, stay tuned for more videos, and we'll catch you next time.